Okay, we are back and we are introduction to federal fair housing laws. Okay, that's what we're going to talk about on our next section. And we're just going to do sections at a time because there's other videos we're taking too long and we're trying to get done with this boring course. I know it's boring, but you got to get through it in order to take your exam. And you can either do it online or you can go to a class. I think the classes have come back since COVID. But whatever the case, you're going to have to get through these. If you have a hard time with some of this dry material, then you might want to go take a real class and go sit in a classroom. But that is going to cost you time. So it depends on what you have going on in your life. If you need time, then you want to do it online. This would be a good way to do it. All right, a handful of legal cases drove the most significant changes in fair housing. And they're going to talk about these Supreme Court cases. You do not have to have these memorized, but you do need to have an idea of what happened here. Because I do recall at least one of these popping up on the exam. I don't know which one, but they usually rotate them. So this one here is Plessy was thrown into jail for sitting in the white car of an East Louisiana railroad. Even though he was considered black despite his light skin, he therefore was required to sit in the colored car. All right, so this has to do with the Separate Car Act legally segregating common transporters in 1892. Plessy deliberately sat in the white car section and identified himself as black. Deliberately sat in the white car section and, okay, he was arrested, and this sounds like a lot of the cases that were going on at that time. And I don't have them all memorized, but there was another one where the bus thing, she was told she had to stand because of her color, and she sat. If anybody is actually listening to this video and knows, you can comment below. All right, our Constitution is colorblind and neither knows nor tolerates classes among citizens in respect to civil rights. The Plessy decision stated that separate facilities for blacks and whites were constitutional as long as they were equal. The U.S. Supreme Court decision in Plessy v. Ferguson was the first to establish separate but legal doctrine of legalized racial segregation. It addresses the inequalities in houses. So I guess the thing with this is they were trying to keep all the blacks in one neighborhood and all the whites in the neighborhood is basically what they were trying to do here. If they're trying to do it on buses and bathrooms and everything, then they're probably trying to do it in the housing market because that's what we're talking about. Maybe separate but equal. Let's see if that's right. Yeah, separate but equal continued to dominate race discussions. All right, Buchanan versus Worley. Another Louisiana. What's going on? Oh, this is Louisville, Kentucky. Okay. All right, a white person sold a house to a black person, and at that time, yeah, this is exactly what I was just talking about, prohibited blacks from living on a block where the majority of the residents were white. Buchanan alleged that the ordinance violated the due process clause of the 14th Amendment. All right, assured to the colored race the enjoyment of all civil rights enjoyed by white persons, and this goes vice versa right now, by the way. All of us should be allowed to enjoy our homes regardless of what color you are. All right, so we have to go down here and fill this out. When Worley learned that he wouldn't be allowed to live there because of a... all right, let's go back and read this. I ain't got this memorized. Okay, because of a blank banning blocks. Banning blocks. Because of a Sydney ordinance banning blocks from moving to a blank where the majority of, maybe it's block here, maybe it's block, where the majority of residents were white, he backed out of the sale. The seller sued him for backing out. But Worley said the city ordinance was a valid reason not to complete the sale. Buchanan then fought the city ordinance, claiming it violated the 14th Amendment, and the Supreme Court agreed with Buchanan. The city ordinance was not constitutional. All right, oh my God, did I get all them right? Wow, okay. This was a huge precedent for future cases. It isn't well known, which is true because I've never heard of this, but it helps keep one color from keeping other colors out, and that goes vice versa nowadays as well. We shouldn't have a whole community of just one color. It shouldn't be the other way around either, like blacks trying to keep whites out or Spanish out or what Asians out, whatever. The good thing about my neighborhood is I got all kinds of diversity. Okay, let's see. The case that came to be known before, Brown versus Board of Education. Now, this is a pretty popular one. I still don't remember what it's about, but I do remember hearing this one. I don't know what it has to do with housing, but let's see. All right, because it anticipated opposition, especially in the South, they allowed segregation in the public schools. All right, most of the Supreme Court all right. See what we see. The primary issue was whether public schools should be allowed to be segregated. What has this got to do with real estate? I don't get it. Separate but equal. We already went over that. Okay. The case took place in the 1890s. I would say no on that because it says right here 1952. The result overturned the Plessy versus Ferguson thing. All right, true. So we just went over this Plessy versus Ferguson. So this overturned that. Primary issue is public schools should be allowed. I don't understand why they're talking about this in a real estate course, but okay, whatever. All right. This is supposed to be fair housing law, not public schools. But anyway, I digress. I'm going to move on. All right, Jones versus Alfred Mayer. All right, in 1968, Joseph Jones tried to buy a home. He refused to sell the home because he claimed the sole reason he denied the sale because of his race. This was denied by Mayer, who claimed the rights to decide who purchased the property in a private sale. He said he ruled in case of favor because the federal law that protected discrimination in housing applied only to the state action and did not apply to individual homeowners that are selling on their own. So this is like for sale by owners. Okay, he's saying that he has the right to choose who he wants to sell his home to. If he doesn't want to sell it to a different race, he doesn't have to. The decision far-reaching effects because it stated definitely that racial discrimination is not allowed in any sale of the property. And that includes whether you're selling it or the broker's selling it. Now, this one does have to do with housing, so this is a good one to know. All right, so let's see. Note that they all are discriminatory, but only one applies to Jones versus Mayer. It's my property. I have the right to choose. So let's see if that's right. Yes. So basically, this is like in a modern time, somebody that is selling a home on their own, which doesn't happen as often anymore, but once in a while you'll see it, like a realtor wants to sell their own home. So they, nowadays you have to go through some kind of brokerage, okay? You can't just go and sell it by yourself. But you could, there might be some people trying. So let's say in modern times, this person didn't have a brokerage, because the brokerage would get sued, and there is no brokerage that's going to go for that, because they would get sued in this day and age. But this is basically a for sale by owner that's selling it on their own, and they do not want a certain race in their home. So that would be kind of an example if you're confused on what that's about. All right, recognizing each case. Separate but equal is not really equal. Segregation in public schools is unconstitutional. And that would be this one. I don't know why that's up in here, but okay. Separate but equal is sufficient. Segregation is allowable. Do you remember which one that was? Was that this one? Rules that ban certain races from living in certain areas are unconstitutional. And Jones versus Mayer. Oh my God, I got them all right. So if you want to take a screenshot of that, go ahead. You're not going to have to memorize all these cases. You are going to have a basic understanding of what they're talking about, because they are going to have some fair housing questions on here for sure, no matter what state you're in. So we used to do this by lesson, but we're going to do it we're going to try and get through more, because we're trying to get done with this. All right. All citizens have the right to own their own house. All right, let's look at this one. This is not yet reviewed. Okay, here we go. These are the ones. Look at all these laws. There's no way you're going to memorize all these laws. So you just need to have a basic understanding of what's going on. All right, the Civil Rights Act of 1866. They are protected in the U.S. to sell, convey, inherit, and possess properties. Executive Order 1962 ended segregation in federal funding housing. So almost getting to 100 years old. 1964. So another 40 years, this will be on, it's 60 years old. It's right now. This is filmed in 2022. All right. Fair housing of 1968. We're still going through this, huh? Still fighting in 1968. Civil rights called Fair Housing Act. This is when it came out. Now, this probably will be on there, so because that's pretty important. So that one you'll probably need to know. Housing and Community Development Act. This one's pretty recent too, so you might need to know that one. Yeah, this is this protected classes, and this has to do with transgender, probably gay and lesbian. And there's probably going to be another one as well for that. This is the equal credit opportunity. And all these have to do with, this is the disability one. So this is very recent. You can't discriminate on disabilities. Okay, here's another one. Older persons, you can't discriminate on older people. Now, there are communities that are specifically built for 55 and older. So it's not discrimination if they tell you can't buy a home in a 55-year-old community. No matter what race you are, you have to be a certain age. And that's an example of the only type they can really keep certain people out. Because a lot of that has to do with school and zoning and stuff. They can't have, even though people could get around that for sure, because people can go live with their grandparents if the person owning the home is 55 years or older. So, but it's that's basically the only time I've ever seen that you can tell somebody, no, they can't live in this community. All right, let's go through this civil rights thing here. The Civil Rights of 1866 was the first step in reducing discrimination based on race and color. The Fair Housing Act prohibited discrimination based on race, color, origin, religion. The Housing and Community Development also added seniors. The 1988 Fair Housing Amendment covered disability, the housing for older persons. Okay, so this one's wrong. This one must be sex. Okay, this one must be seniors. Okay, let's keep going. All right, if you struggle keeping these straight, just try boiling them down to one bullet point each, and this would be a good screenshot right here. Okay, the Civil Rights was 1860. The Civil War was race and color. The 1960s Civil Rights Movement was largely responsible for the Fair Housing Act. Feminism was in full swing in 1970s. So the sex was added to the housing and community. Okay, changing family structures in 1988 led to disabilities. People with disabilities was added. And then outdated homes with staircases, small bathrooms proved to be a hindrance for people with wheelchairs. So 1990, that's when they added the seniors, okay? So this is a breakdown. This is a great screenshot if you're having trouble remembering all this stuff. Just rewind the video if you missed this. Go back and take a screenshot. All right, lesson 2. We're going to try and get through as many as we can. We're going to go into protected classes. All right, I don't know what that means, but let's go. Okay, Kara, a licensed real estate professional, is a property manager for Bill, the owner of a large apartment building. Look at these numbers. I'm spending so much in evictions, it's not even funny, she says. Then we got the vacancies, the cleanup, not to mention repairs. What do you propose I do, Bill? I screen the tenants in the same way. You and I both know what the problem is here. We never had trouble with the Asians or the whites, and it's just you've been running to. You just need to screen a little harder. The other thing is male tenants. You don't see women bashing in walls. So I think you should aim for at least a 70-30 ratio women to men. That should cut our issues in half. If this sounds harsh, racist, and sexist, well, unfortunately it is, and it's also the position licensees can find themselves in. Kara, under pressure from her bosses, has to make a decision. There are 7 classes federally protected by discrimination. Okay, and that's race, color, origin, place of birth, religion. You can't show preference because of somebody's religious group, familiar status, disabilities, intent, and effect. All right. Let's say when a prospect wants to see a unit and she shows all the whites the new building and shows African Americans the rundown building, it's a race issue, right? Or color? Maybe not. Maybe it's color. Because she's saying here whites. Okay, she requires $1,000 deposit from all black South African tenants, but only $500 from all white South African tenants. Okay, so that would be race. She avoids renting to everyone who seems Middle Eastern because they have ties to terrorists. Okay, that could be. No, never mind. I got them mixed up. Okay, so this would be race, and then this would be color. Okay, all right. Let's try it again. So this one is race. This one's color. Natural origin. All right, there we go. All right, seems the opposite to me, but okay, what do I know? All right, so build a story in the following terms. All right, the apartment building offers parking on first come, first service. A tenant who uses a wheelchair requested a designated parking near the door. Kara said no because all the other tenants would think it's unfair. This is discrimination based on a disability. Because you have to provide reasonable accommodation. And Kara knows that this sound travels easily and wants to encourage anyone with kids to rent a ground floor. And this is discrimination based on familiar status. To avoid visitors tramping in at odd hours at night, she only rents to single men if they're Christian. And this is a twofold discrimination because it's based on religion and it applies only to men based on their sex. These are just some examples of, okay, this is based on disability. This is based on, I got these mixed up by the way. Sex based on religion. These are an example of some of the types of things that go on. Once in a while they'll come out because somebody will report them. But this kind of stuff still goes on a lot today, believe it or not. It's just not discussed because they're going to end up in a lawsuit. All right. Fair housing laws, exemptions. Okay. So I was talking about a little bit of this earlier. If you're in a 55 and older community, that could be an example of an exemption. Another exemption could be religious organizations that have private clubs, and that's how they are determining their clubs are based. So that would not be discrimination because you know this is a club. It's the same with an all-woman or all-man club. These are not. Let me hide this. Maybe we can move on. For some reason it's not moving on. Okay. I'm going to pause this and see what's going on here.